There's been a lot of talk and news surrounding Johor, and I'm not talking about the new king of Malaysia. I'm talking about investments. Now, there's been a lot of activity happening down south. So in this, I'm going to show you 5 takeaways about what's happening in Johor. So the first point is quite easy. What's happening in Singapore is that over the last 12 months, Singapore has actually stopped issuing new licenses for data centers to be built. Now, why? The one main reason is because data centers consume a lot of power to actually keep them running. When I talk about data centers, I don't mean a small room with maybe 25 PCs in there. These are huge and large data centers that consumes megawatts of power. Now, what has happened, that spillover effect has actually meant that a lot of data centers right now, as we speak, are being built in Johor itself. Talking about 50 acres, 100 acres, these are huge, and they are not smaller companies building them. They are your Alphabet, your Google, your Netflix, your Nvidia, your Microsoft. These international giants are actually building these data centers. Now, big question is, why Johor, right? If you look at globally how the whole world is connected through internet, we use a lot of submarine cables to connect between continents, right? And one of the main points in Asia where all the internet submarine cables end up is actually down south. It's actually based in Singapore. So it only makes sense for data centers to be built as close as possible to these submarine cables. So hence, right, there's a big play in Johor. Therefore, you're seeing jobs being created, constructions being created, and of course, what we're actually also seeing is demand for real estate. Now, point number 2, where I think a lot of people who live in the Klang Valley, like myself, was not aware of. In 2019, the Malaysian government and the Singapore government inked an agreement where they were going to extend Singapore's MRT station all the way to Johor Bahru city centre. That is known as the RTS Link, Rapid Transit System. Now that rail that they're building right now as we speak, it's about 5 kilometers long, but it's expected at peak to actually transport 10,000 passengers per hour. Now that's actually pretty phenomenal. Now what this means is that accessibility to Singapore has now been made much easier, much faster. If you dig a little bit deeper, what happened is that they're going to keep the Malaysian and the Singapore customs in one building. So it could be as easy as just getting past customs in less than 5 minutes. You're on a train and you're in Singapore in less than 5 minutes, right? By making commuting much easier, this will really reduce time to travel to Singapore. Now what this means, right, it's real estate, yeah? Because if you're a Malaysian, a lot of Malaysians actually work in Singapore, but they live in Malaysia. So there's transit time, meaning they have to wake up at 5, they don't come back at 9, so it's really, really long. And the alternative right now is to actually live in Singapore, and really if you're renting a room in Singapore, the cost is between 1,500 Sing to 2,000 Sing a month. Now if you convert that to ringgit, literally someone who's doing that can now have the option to actually live in JB at a fraction of the cost. So what has happened is that we're seeing a lot of demand now building up for real estate in JB or the surrounding areas in JB, because now it's very possible to live in JB and actually work in Singapore. Now the third point is also very complementary to point number 2 when we talk about RTS, the Rapid Transit System, is actually an LRT, a light rail transit system that's going to go around JB itself. Right now what's being proposed, it's a 30-kilometer LRT system that will be built in and about the JB city and its surrounding area. Now this is going to be highly complementary to the RTS Link because they're all going to be connected. Again, real estate is that focus or that immediate focus right now, but the secondary focus is likely going to be construction, or projects that's likely going to be built as the whole LRT system is completed. Now, point number 4. Now, this is pretty big news. January 11, 2024, the Malaysian Prime Minister and the Singaporean Prime Minister came together to sign an MOU on a special economic zone for Johor and Singapore. So what this means is the Malaysian Prime Minister is actually empowered to carve out a special physical zone where the laws of that special economic zone does not apply to the rest of the country. Now, similarly, if you look at what happened in the 90s, where Shenzhen, who was a small fishing village, was turned into a mega city because of its proximity to Hong Kong, we may possibly see a rise of a new JB or a new Johor that with a lot of the spillover effect on commerce and business that's happening in the Singapore region. There will be many opportunities if this happens, but probably the most obvious opportunity for the everyday investor will be real estate or equities that are very heavily involved in the state of Johor. Point number 5, as you already know, our new king of Malaysia comes from the state of Johor. Now, new king is very well known to be very entrepreneurial and likely also to be very business friendly. So it is very important that the state rulers is also very supportive of commerce in this region. So I think these are the 5 points just to keep you up to date very quickly on what's happening and what's moving and buzzing in Johor. And if you're looking at building your portfolio, this region is something definitely to look out for.